Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our visitors today and also our members. I believe there's 97 booked on, which will be a sort of varied and jam-packed agenda. For those that don't know me, I'm Peter Fleming. I run my own business consultancy in North Cumbria. However, I'm also director of Britain's Energy Coast Business Cluster and co-lead the business support group with Tom Scaife, particularly focusing on the SME agenda. I'm sure, like many of you, we're all a bit zoomed out and fatigued, but so hopefully, fingers crossed, in the next month or two, we might get some news where we can potentially meet up again at Energous. I'm certainly looking forward to that. But like I say, hopefully we'll get some more news on that from the government on the next steps in the next few weeks and months. Just before we start today, just a few operational updates from the board. Firstly, I don't know if you've seen the emails recently, but there's a vacant seat on the board. As Sean Beattie was stepping down due to her own sort of business commitments. Therefore, if you're interested in a role on the board of Beck BC, please contact Hazel in the interim. Any expressions of interest need to be submitted by Friday the 14th of May, which is next week, and voting will take place at our June meeting, which is the AGM, on Wednesday the 9th of June. Secondly, and I'm sure you're all aware, but after 15 years of absolute tremendous service to Beck BC, Hazel's taken the decision to focus on her own business, Woodrow Services. I'm sure Hazel's busy in the background trying to get people onto the meeting, but just wanted to say a few words on behalf of the board that we respect Hazel's decision, are very grateful for her tireless devotion to the service excellence and delivery and support our members, particularly their businesses through these last many years and the last few months. We also wish Hazel and Woodrow Services continued success and know that our members will be joining us in thanking her for enormous contribution she has made to the cluster and one of the most welcoming places for us all to do business in. So there'll be more. Hazel will be around certainly for the next couple of months, but there is a call out for operations management on the Beck BC website within the members forum. And we're hoping the transition period will be completed hopefully by the end of June. But if you've got any questions regarding the opportunities, please do get in touch with either myself or certainly one of the board members. And I'm sure, is Hazel, she's busy. I was going to ask for a show of hands and appreciation, but I'm not sure if Hazel's watching. But if we can all just show hands of appreciation for Hazel in the interim. And thank you very much, Hazel, for your support. She's head down, she's busy with there. So without further ado, I'm going to hand back to Andrew for a jam-packed meeting and the first presentation from John Berry of Sellafield. So do enjoy the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So John, it's over to you. John Berry from Sellafield Limited with a supply chain update.
Okay, thank you. I've no slides this morning, so you're just going to have to put up with my my face. And I think Hazel did say earlier that it looked like a halo over my head, which is a first for that. I assure you, that's that's not a normal state of affairs. But unfortunately, when you get to my age and the hair starts growing here and not up here, then that's what happens when you sit under skylights. I'm sure there are one or two people in the room that are familiar with that sort of situation. So thank you, Andrew. I'm part of the supply chain development team at Sellafield. So we're the first point of contact for questions, feedback, information, introductions, and resolving any problems that suppliers might have in entering our supply chain or operating in our supply chain. So some of you may recall that once or twice when I've hosted cluster meetings at Energous, I encourage people to switch off mobiles and pay full attention to the speakers who often put themselves in the spotlight and sometimes as a bag with a bag full of nerves to go alongside it. Well, this time I'm giving you permission to look at your phone, sort your emails, make a coffee. I won't know either way. And let's be really honest, I won't have anything useful or interesting to say. But to the rest of you, thanks for listening. Today, what am I going to cover? A few things. So DDP, PPP, IAC, DPS, the SME agenda, and our manifesto. Don't understand that? We'll come to it later. So first of all, DDP, the Decommissioning Delivery Partnership. This provides a route to market for a broad range of services supporting the decommissioning mission at Sellafield. It's up to 1.5 billion over a 10-year period, 2006 to 2026, celebrating 5 years now. So services are provided through 6 consortia organisations, which we call lot delivery partners. And there are 6 lot delivery partners making up a variety of joint ventures and collaborations. I'm trying to cover, you'll see what I'm trying to do today is make sure that there are some of you on the call that understand all this, understand what DDP is, but there are many people on the call that don't and are new to our way of working, our way of talking, etc. So if it feels for some of you being slightly patronising, go and grab a coffee. So the DDP are celebrating 5-year milestone, and they're going to be speaking at various events, presumably the cluster being one of them. I've made the introduction to Hazel. So I don't want to steal their thunder, but I think there are some highlights that are worth talking about. Over the last 5 years, they've won 3 Gold ROSPA Awards. They've won 3 Sellafield 19 Wave Awards in 2019. They've removed 862 metric tons from pile 1 diffuser. They've achieved £70 million in savings. 6 million plus hours have been worked without a lost time accident, and they've delivered set machines early. So delivering things early at Sellafield, is brilliant. And there are really some challenges and some realistic reasons why we do run over time frames. We're a big complex site, so delivering stuff early really ought to be celebrated. Briefly touching on PPP, program and project partners, and they're formally going to launch details of the matchmaking service in May. So later on this month, you'll be pleased to hear that this will be facilitated by Dominic Doig, who I see is on the call from Solomon's Europe. So I know that will work really well because I know Dominic well enough. Big friend of the cluster. Might even want to think about going for a board role there, Dominic. I don't know. But anyway, you'll hear more from Dominic later in the month about that. There are numerous companies that have already registered for that matching service using PPP supply.chain at sellafieldsites.com. And that email address is picked up by individuals who work across the lot partners. So not although it's a Sellafield email address, it's not managed by the supply chain development team. That's the PPP lot partners. So those registered companies that have already emailed will be contacted in the near future, and any new companies can email that. If you've not registered for that and not shown interest in the matchmaking service, you can drop an email to that address. The focus initially on that will apparently be around tranche 1 of multi-project procurements, which is HVAC, fabrication, E&I, and building fit out. Staying with PPP shortly, ITTs have been issued for the HVAC key delivery partner on the 28th of April, so that's good news. We've got fabrication, E&I, and building fit out packages that are currently at PQQ stage, assessment stage, and ITTs are going to be issued throughout May and June for those. The market engagement phase for pipe work commences this Friday, and registration is via CTM. Short term, 2021 focus on tranche 1, HVAC, fabrication, E&I, and build fit out, already said that. Tranche 2 and further packages will be advertised via CTM in due course. But just to mention that the PPP lot partners are establishing their own electronic procurement management system. So that'll be rolled out over the coming months, and at which point opportunities will migrate from CTM to there. So watch out for more information on that. But the final thing to add on PPP is the procurement plan has been finalised and will be available over the next few weeks. Will be published somewhere. Where that is, we'll still working on that slightly, but it will be published. Next acronym to talk about is DPS, Dynamic Purchasing System, Engineering and Technology Marketplace Solutions. I seem to think it is. There has been a backlog on DPS, and I apologise for the situation with that, and I share and understand your frustration if you've for this particular DPS and you're not hearing stuff. The backlog has been really around health and safety evaluators not being available. No, we have resolved that. We've got people that are working hard on doing that right now. So we're hopeful that we will be able to progress this at some pace now, because obviously that has been a while that it's been sitting around. And what I do know is that we've had conversations with people on site who want to be able to use the DPS. So when we've got through that backlog and got that cleared, we can get some opportunities pushed out on that. So again, if you've applied for that and you want to ask questions about it, you can come to us at Supply Chain Inquiries Team, email coming up later, or you can talk to other people in the on the DPS directly. And we will do some further comms on that, to make sure that nobody misses out. Next acronym, IAC, Integrated Asset Care. This is the civil, mechanical, and electrical engineering replacement for Operation Site Works, worth in the value of 200 to 250 million. The ITT is due to be issued today or tomorrow. There might be a couple of days slippage. We were hoping that the original date that we had earmarked for that was the 4th. But there might be a couple of days slippage on there on some of the dates further on. The deadline for the ITT submission back will be the 15th of June. So again, we might push that date out by a couple of dates. And then we are looking to evaluate tenders and go through governance from the 16th of June up to the 17th of April, obviously quite next year. So obviously quite a complex process to go through. And preferred bidder notification will be 18th of April. Contract award, we're still on track for the 3rd of May 2022. SME agenda I want to talk about next. We continue to work really hard on this behind the scenes. Obviously last year was difficult, and it's looking like we'll struggle to achieve the final target, which was 32%. We're still waiting for some results in, and fingers crossed that some of the results that come back from our tier 2s, where we collect the data from, some of the data from, may well surprise us, and we may get a rush. But the reality is, it's unlikely that we're going to hit that 32% target. For me personally, this is really disappointing and frustrating. But equally, I've got to balance and recognise that it's been a unique and challenging year. So things coming up on the SME agenda to be aware of. We've got a short session slated for the 16th of June, and this will be led by our corporate comms lead, Matt Legg. And what we're going to focus on there is on writing useful case studies or press releases and how to get them approved by Sellafield. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is that we had I put a call out for some case studies to the SME community a few weeks ago, and what we had back was a mixed bag, and I would expect a mixed bag back. We had some that were beautifully written and well presented, and and met the brief, etc. And it was a short time frame. And then we had others that were some words thrown together and a couple of pictures, and then we would have to work on that. So we want to be able to help with that, but equally what I recognise is that we don't necessarily make it easy or clear as to, if you have worked with us and you want to be able to produce a press release or a case study and talk to others about it, we don't always make it clear how you do that. So that session will help with that. Again, if you're not sure on that, you can't attend the session or whatever reason, drop us a line and we'll make sure that we help with that and point you in the right direction. The next SME forum is on the 17th of June, and we'll have DDP representatives present there to be able to talk about what opportunities are coming up on DDP. I want to touch on our manifesto next, and some of you will be aware that we've got new facilities under development at Sellafield Industrial Estate in Moor, and we'll talk about that at a future event. I don't want to go into that today. But I visited yesterday and I was shown around by Ian Henderson, who is providing some interim support there. what was really evident to me, it was my first visit out. It was my first, that they let me out of this office, this attic. So it's the first time that I'd really been anywhere. And since October, probably last year. I've been to Asda, obviously, but beyond that, from a work perspective, I haven't been very far. And so it was really good to see that at the facility, the manifesto was everywhere. But it wasn't just, loads of posters on walls. It was really seen as people were talking about it. The people that I met were talking about how they aligned with it without any prompting. That they were just talking about that, about the manifesto. And I think that they're looking to, that they're talking about and excited about how they change behaviours. People have worked at site for a very long time, getting excited and motivated by a simple but really effective way to ensure that for Sellafield, the change is for good. It's not just a short-term initiative to align to. So it was really, really good to see that. For suppliers, I think we've said this before, there's an expectation that not that you'll adopt the manifesto, but perhaps that you'll align with it. You'll have your own set of values and ways of behaviours in your own companies, but just to think about how we align with that. And that sort of brings me on to ethics, and I said I'd cover a short slot for this from Stuart Wilson, who some of you will know was the ombudsman for Sellafield. So Stuart works on supplier relationship management now, and is the lead on modern slavery. And we're about to publicise our revised version of our modern slavery statement. And in supply chains, it's something that tends to get overlooked. We put a statement out, we produce it. Then do we really look at that? Do we do really sufficient due diligence about ensuring that we're following through on that, and supporting that statement? Thinking about the reputational damage that can be done if further down the supply chain, it's plastered on the Times and Star, or even further, that companies have have fallen foul of modern slavery in their supply chain. That's not going to do your company. Never mind the ramifications from home. Just parking the ramifications of what that really means, but actually the damage that it does to your company overall. So just worth a reminder. Do the due diligence. In the coming months, as we change some of our structure closer to my team, we'll be developing strategies and increasing our focus on ethical procurement and sustainability. So perhaps it's the right time to be thinking about these things as well. I wanted to go back to Ian. You remember I mentioned Ian Henderson. Ian's a long-term friend of the cluster, and he was involved at early stages of the development of the cluster many years ago. And in fact, he put a post on LinkedIn that said he interviewed Hazel all those years ago, and knew immediately she was the right person for the role. But we were talking yesterday, and perhaps going a little bit philosophical here, we were talking about the bucket analogy, and some of you who've been around the cluster for a long time will be familiar with Ian's bucket. And he said, it's a bucket that you bring along to the meetings at Energies, and we've all got a responsibility to put something in to that, not to be just taking things out. So as we come as members, remember this is a membership organisation, we come along, we shouldn't just be taking out of the bucket, we should be putting in, because otherwise if we come along to a meeting and take stuff out and don't contribute to everything, then that bucket is soon going to be empty. And I think I think the message from me is we shouldn't just be leaving this to board members who are volunteers, that step up to this. We should be taking more responsibility and involvement in the cluster, because it's quite a lot to sit on board members' shoulders who are there just to, as I say, as volunteers. So that's my sort of philosophical message. I can't turn down an opportunity to present here without paying some homage to Hazel. She's not going to like this. she's probably, if she's purposely not listening, or she's going to ignore me, but I'm going to keep it brief. But in my opinion, Hazel's the engine room of the cluster. She's the one who's managed to keep that bucket filled. And when I was on the board, she was brilliant at keeping a group of willing volunteers on track and reminding us of our purpose. And that's to serve as the board members. It's to serve the membership. I know that board meetings won't be the same without her when she leaves later in the year, because they were always good fun as well. And I'm sure, as you know, echoing Peter's thoughts, everybody will join me in wishing her a success in whatever future ventures she develops. And finally, from me, I used to sit in the auditorium at Energist before I joined Sellafield, and I used to switch off at some presentations. There's the reality. There's the cold, hard, honest truth. Because it felt like another world. It felt like there was a world of technology that I didn't understand, and there were more acronyms than an episode of Line of Duty. And to be honest, I still don't get the technology or many of the acronyms. That's the reality. It's too big to be able to understand them all. But if any of that sounds familiar to you, if you sometimes sit there and say, you know, I don't know what this guy's rattling on about. I don't know what DDP is. I don't know what this is. What is it they're going on about? Then get in touch with us. We can talk you through some of those answers. So we have business open sessions that we run on a monthly basis. You can book onto one of the sessions, the 20-minute slots, have a conversation with us, and there might be follow-up from there. So book onto them via the website, or drop us an email. I said I promised to do the email. I'll put it in the chat afterwards, but supply.chain.inquiries@sellafieldsites.com. And that, with 2 minutes to spare, is me. I'll hand back. Thank you for listening, or enjoying a coffee, if that's what you do.
Thank you, John. We've had a couple of questions in, so you're not quite off the hook yet, even though you might have been 2 minutes early. So first question, which I'll just throw out, which was a clarification, and I can't see where it was. It was the dates on the IAC dates. Yes, Dave Henson was asking, can you just give the IAC dates again, please, John?
Absolutely, I could. With me. So the ITT will be today or tomorrow. The deadline for submission will be the 15th of June this year. Evaluated tenders and governance will take place between the 16th of June or thereabouts and the 17th of April next year. Prepared bidder notification will be the 18th of April 2022. Contract award 3rd of May, and mobilisation 4th of May to 26th of July. Just to add that we're mindful and aware that there are some stuff coming up on PPP at the same time frame as IAC and others. We do our best not to overlap on these, but sometimes the reality is that the dates clash and we can't move them. So apologies if it means that you're burning both ends of the candle there for a short period to be able to respond to all the bits that you'd like to do. Okay, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, David.
Couple more questions. So Diane, you were first in. I'll come to you, Diane Richardson.
Thanks, Andrew. John, you'd be surprised me being first in with a question, wouldn't you? I wonder, it's a two-parter. So the first part is, do you think the SME target drives the outcomes it was intended to? And the second part is there something you'd like to see us as supply chain companies do to help Sellafield achieve it, including getting the right outcomes? Good
question. So first question, the target is just a number. It unfortunately, it's very difficult to be able to measure where the idea behind the target is that it drives economic growth. That's ultimately what we're looking to do. We're looking to drive economic growth, and the government has decided that there's a way that they'll measure that, and that's the rough metric that we've put in place to be able to do that. It's not ideal. what is more important is the work that we do to underpin. It's the activities that we do to be able to drive to work towards the target. And we've always been very clear on that's what's really important. Now, that brings me on to the sort of second part of your question in some way. It's taken me a painfully long time, but we've got a revised SME action plan. I nearly said strategy. I don't want a strategy, I want an action plan. I want a list of things that we're going to do. But it's not just about what Sellafield are going to do. And when we publish this, which I'm not going to give a date to because I keep giving a date and I'm missing it. But when we publish this, it will be a mixture of things. It'll be actions of things that SMEs will do. Sorry, no, start it again. It will be a list of things that Sellafield will do. It'll be a list of things that the tier 2s that have agreed that they're going to do. It'll be a list of things that will be a collaboration of those, things that we'll do jointly. And then finally, as part of that, and I've emailed some people out just yesterday to ask for feedback on this, there'll be a list of commitments from SMEs. What can the SMEs do to be able to drive this as well? Because we can't do this in isolation. This is not something that we're going to be achieved on our own. I'm conscious I might be running over time. No, I've got 3 minutes, haven't I, Andrew? Hopefully that answers the question, Diane.
It does, thanks, John.
Okay, thank you both. Peter, you had a question as well. Peter Fleming.
Yeah, John, just a great presentation. John, I'm not wanting to put you on the spot here, but just based on our sort of discussions we've had, John, regarding smaller packages, say values less than 25k, that might be sort of procured through the procurement department. Has there been any sort of further thoughts, developments in how to engage with the smaller SMEs locally and particularly BEC members? Have you got any sort of insights, or has there been any developments on that, John?
In reality, and I'm not going to fudge this, no, Peter. That's not because of lack of appetite for that. I think that the reality is that our team over the past 12 months has been inundated with all the COVID response and the things that we've had to do there. So some of that is very reactive. Companies being in touch with us that we need to respond to, etc. Some of that is that we've had reduced capacity in the past 12 months. So there's only so much that we can achieve with the resource that we've got. That doesn't mean that it's not important and we don't want to drive that forward. One of the aspirations that I've got in for this current year, which I've talked openly about, is really increasing the number of link opportunities. And I think somebody else asked a question about link, and the idea is that we would really like to bring resource in so that we can really push up the link opportunities that we push out. We keep talking about having the number of companies that are qualified for link, and I think it's about 500 now. That's not what's really important. What's really important is the number of challenges that we put through and the value that those SMEs that win those bring to Sellafield. And we're at 65 challenges. We've got about 4 in the pipeline. Don't ask me what they are. Sophie would shoot because she tells me almost every day. But we've got 65 challenges that we put through. We've put some stretch targets in for what we're going to achieve this year in terms of the number of challenges that we push through per month. And that will be, go some way to resolving some of that. But it won't be the ones that are less than 25k.
Brilliant. Yeah, and again, the offer's there. If there's anything we can do as in respect to BEC to facilitate and move that forward and help with these actions, John, just shout. So
absolutely. Thanks, Peter. I do appreciate the support and the conversations that we've had around it.
Great. Thank you.
And you've just touched on it, John, but Thomas Anderson asked the question, when are the link challenges likely to be released again, and will there be more per month going forwards? But they've never stopped, Thomas. So we've continued them. I think we did 24 in the period last year, which actually in a COVID year, still issuing 24 is pretty good. I have an aspiration, which I've talked about openly, as I mentioned. I think we could and should be doing 50 opportunities a year, but we don't have those coming through to us. So this is not about resource. It is to some extent. To some extent, this is about us being proactive
with people on site and pushing link and saying, look, this is a route that you could use to be able to solve a problem fairly quickly. We don't have that resource to be able to go and do that right now, and that will drive the opportunities that come through. But we do have, we can utilise some of our colleagues in the directorate to be able to push link more and to utilise it more. What I really need to do is get some really good case studies for internal focus built. So if you've won, as I know you have, Thomas, if you've won link opportunities and you want to help by starting to write a case study, and we can take that to show the value, take that to internal clients to show the value that brought, then that would really help me. So anybody that's on the call that's won link and wants to pull a case study together that's focused on internal Sellafield clients, that would help me enormously, and we can help you to do that as well.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you for those questions, everybody. We are out of time. We need to move on. So we are going to patch in our next speaker, Jim Cochrane, and he is going to be talking about submarine dismantling and what has been learnt. So, Jim, are you there? It looks like you have unmuted your mic.
Here, if you can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name's Jim Cochrane. I head up the Submarine Dismantling Project, Ministry of Defence project, to dismantle 27 ex-service nuclear submarines. So yeah, I'll give you a quick overview of here. I'll try not to use jargon and tech stuff as much as I can, but please interrupt me or ask me questions at the end if you don't get it. But this is a kind of an overview, kind of like as high level as I can make it without passing on any trade secrets or doing things that I shouldn't do. So could I have the next slide, please? So what is submarine dismantling? So it says that in the UK, we have 20 submarines, and these submarines are stored safely. We have 13 ex-service nuclear submarines down at the Devonport dockyard down in Plymouth, and 7 of the submarines are at Rosyth. Some of the submarines have still got radioactive fuel on board, so we need to get the fuel off those submarines before we can actually start dismantling work. And you'll also see that 7 submarines are still at sea, doing what submarines do when they're at sea. So the plans for submarine dismantling, it's to dismantle 7 submarines and do that at Rosyth. And I'll show you a slide next where Rosyth is. And then once we've dismantled those submarines, get out of the dockyard, which is by 2037. The next thing is then go on to defuel and then dismantle 20 submarines at Devonport, starting in 2035. So you'll see this is a long-term programme. It goes out to 2070. So yeah, it will extend well beyond my career and probably my career, the kids' career as well. So what we're dealing with is 2 types of radioactive waste. We've got low-level radioactive waste, which we can take off and we can dispose through existing routes, one of them being the LLWR facility. So the other one is the intermediate level waste, which we don't have a disposal route for. And we're reliant on the UK to supply that disposal facility for us. So once the radioactive waste has been removed, we're going to then tow the submarine, and the idea is then to tow that off so that it will undergo final recycling. So effectively, I say this is a 2-stage process. It's remove the radioactive waste and recycle the submarine. So it's as much as how we do the end stage recycling as it is about removing the radioactive waste. So there's where we are. This is the Rosyth dockyard. The dockyard's actually owned by a company called Babcock, and there's 2 main areas on the site. This is an aerial photograph. If you try and perspective of this, if you look to the left of this photograph, you would see the new Forth Road Bridge. So Rosyth's about 20 miles from Edinburgh. And what happens at the dockyard is 2 things. We store the submarines. You can see the top right or the middle, top middle. That's where we store submarines. And then you can actually see a very, very small picture of a submarine actually sitting in the dock waiting to undergo its submarine dismantling. So there's 2 things we do. We store them safely and then we dismantle them at the site. So what we did was we started off well, and we have done a lot of good work already. The first submarine to get dismantled was a submarine called Swiftsure. which started in December 2016. And the picture there on the screen shows the submarine after it had radioactive waste removed, but the radioactive waste was a low-level waste removed. But as I said, the other thing we're looking to do is maximise the amount of metals to be recycled. So we did that on Swiftsure. Following that, we then onto another submarine, Resolution. And you can see that as we go through the picture here from Swiftsure to Resolution to Revenge, what we're doing basically is learning from experience. We're doing things faster, we're doing things safer, we're removing more low-level radioactive waste, but we're actually doing the job and we're learning as we go along, because this hasn't been done before, not in the UK, but not in the world. The good news, and the thing we're always very, very careful about, is just to make sure health and safety is at the top of our agenda. So we have, in terms of like reportable incidents to the regulator, Office for Nuclear Regulation, or to SEPA, our environmental regulator, we have done over 600,000 man hours without a reportable incident. So, it's not just about doing the job, it's about doing the job safely. So in terms of working with industry, we are keen to engage in the supply chain, but our problem with the Ministry of Defence is that we have to make sure we comply with security regulations. So my view is I'd like to optimise and work with the industry, but the way we tend to do it is through framework contracts, which are really, really cumbersome, and I absolutely hate them. But that is kind of the way to do it. But it is slowly changing. We do try to maximise the LLWR framework for the likes of characterisation and final disposal. We're looking to do more of that, and we're already in discussions with the LLWR to do that. We had great support in 2019 when we engaged with Sellafield and with a local company, React, to look at a different way of removing the intermediate level radioactive waste called in situ dismantling. So we had great work on that one. It didn't actually happen, but that was due to a programme issue rather than to anything technical. And we are really looking to maximise use of learning from experience. So that's what we are doing just now. We've got, and as I say, as we go along, we're doing things better. We're looking at new lifting solutions for big items that come out of submarines, such as steam generators. We're looking for more simple approaches to do it. We've invested in laser technology to do hull cuts for the submarine. So, there's technologies and there's techniques out there that we look to engage with. But as I say, it's learning as we go along and trying to find out what's available through the supply chain. And the other great example of collaborative working was in 2020 when Low-Level Waste Repository and Radioactive Waste Management came to the site and offered up their free time, which was also great, to kind of look at the way that we were doing things and give the benefit of the civil experience to see what was done in there and how, if we could do things better and faster. So it was an absolute brilliant demonstration of collaborative working. And, we in the Submarine Dismantling Project get an awful lot out of that. So in terms of what else we're doing, so the focus, as I said, over the next month is to do something we call characterisation. I'm sure some people are familiar with it. This to get information about what's in the submarine, how active are the metals, what's the radioactive waste, what's the concentrations, and that will inform how best to dismantle the submarines. So we want to make sure that we get as much information about the reactor compartment components so that we understand what we need to do, and then we build plant and equipment that dismantles the submarine. We're also designing one of the biggest transport containers in the UK. That's going to transport our main intermediate level waste component, which is called the reactor pressure vessel. So we're going to put the reactor pressure vessel in a big transport container and send that from Scotland down to a nuclear licence site in northwest England called Capenhurst. We're also in contract with an organisation called Tridibi to treat some radioactive resins. And that's a kind of novel and innovative approach we've been working on from before. So yeah, again, they're great examples of assistance with the NDA and others in the civil supply chain as to some of the techniques that we can use for that. And then the two other things that we're looking into is basically one of the issues is about security. So that's something we need to take into account. The submarines are based on an American designed reactor, and there's a US and UK agreement in place about making sure that any information doesn't end up in the wrong hands, and avoid Jim's nightmare where something gets taken off the submarine and ends up being on eBay. So that's what Jim needs to prevent happening, what to do. And the other thing is we need to work out how to actually clean up the submarine so that when we do send it off the Rosyth and Devonport sites, it can go for recycling and there's no radioactive waste left in it. So what we're learning as we go along this, the submarine dismantling in terms of, dismantling is different from civil. But we have a 70-year dismantling program. So we need to horizon scan. We need to learn, what we're doing, make improvements, and we need to, engage with the supply chain to see what's out there that we can use that improves performance. So the submarine is complex and it's got security protocols in place, but that's something we just need to overcome. So I think that's something that we just need into account. Technology and techniques, we basically what we need to do is cut very thick, metals that are activated with radioactivity. So that's something that we need to do. The difficulty we have is actually deploying those tools and techniques within the constraints of a submarine. If you've ever been in a submarine, you've probably seen programs. There ain't a lot of space in there. So some of the technologies need to be downsized and size reduced so that they are small size so they can actually there. And then the final thing that we always find out, as you go along, you always have surprises. One of the things that we actually everything stopped for 2 weeks last year because there was nesting peregrine falcons in the dock, and we just had to stop all work. So things like this, nature can get in the way of actually submarine dismantling. But you know what? Yeah, that was a good thing to do. So I think we'll just close it there. And I see there's some questions, and if I can hand it back to you, if you want to kind of like chair the questions, and that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions, and we've got 4, I think, at the moment, which should just take us nicely to time. So first of all, that first question came from Diane Richardson again. A question on social value.
I heard that inflection in the again, Andrew. I'll be quiet moving forward, I promise. I was just wondering, Jim, great presentation and obviously a really great approach, but with the change with PPN 06 and the work that's going on with the Green Book, etc., are you currently measuring social value through the project?
I'd love to say, Diane, that we absolutely are. We're starting to do it. Not we've done it for ages. Yes, now there's a social value. Now in any contracts we're putting out, we actually require everybody to kind of demonstrate how they will make that commitment and how they'll actually do it. So we've just started to put it into our contracts. But yeah, it's absolutely something that not just submarine dismantling, the whole Ministry of Defence are moving to that kind of. And I think there's actually a target we have to kind of, in terms of like weighting when we actually assess bids, 10% of the weighting is associated with social value. So it's starting to come right up the priority chain for us. So yes is the answer, but we're just starting.
That's great to hear, Jim. It's my day job, you see, so it's always going to be the question from me.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you both. Lee Nicklin.
I was just wondering what the container is going to be manufactured from, please, Jim.
So it's a Type B. If you're familiar with the terminology, it's a Type B transport container, and we're kind of the construction materials. It's going to be predominantly stainless steel. So we're on the contract now to do the design for that work. So we haven't finished the design yet, but we're kind of like when we need to submit the design to get regulatory approval. So the design is near finishing, put it into a regulator, and it'll be like another 1 or 2 years before we actually get into the manufacturing of it.
Thank you, Jim. I'm sure there's not just me, a couple of other people I know very interested in stainless steel. I can see Stuart interested down there. Can we, would it be possible to hook up offline, Jim? I'd like to help you understand how we can perhaps help you going forward with you.
Yeah. I think there's contact. I think there's a final slide that's got contact, email address, and telephone numbers for me. So yeah, happy to chat.
Lovely. There might be a couple of companies on here that would like to collaborate. Stuart, I'm guessing you're one, hopefully.
Craig Baker, you had a question as well.
Yeah, just the one question. First of all, thanks for the presentation, Jim. It was really interesting and nice and short and to the point. The processes involved, the procedures often drive you into inefficient processes on these jobs, and the timescales look really, really difficult. Have you got any initiatives to help shorten the programs going on at the moment? We commission things, but we're interested in front-end design as well.
Yeah. We've kind of like we've got our program at the moment, and it's probably because of funding constraints. It's kind of like doing one boat and then finishing one submarine and then doing the next one. The kind of thing we're looking into is once we've kind of like nailed the first one, and the first one we're looking to complete, we call it in razor blades. So we want the first submarine in razor blades by 2026. The opportunities then kind of like look at the design, look at what we've learned, and then look at the idea of parallel dismantling. Could you do 1, 2, 3 submarines at a time? Could you, anything that can accelerate the program, because at the moment it's funded out to 2070, but if you can finish early, that will save time and money. So there's an opportunity probably, in the next couple of years to look at, could we speed up the program with innovation?
Okay, thanks for that. It's very informative. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thanks.
And a couple of questions just to left. If we move on to Alistair Kitching.
Hi, yes, Alistair Kitching here from Red Engineering. So I had a question. You mentioned...
Alistair, I'm struggling to hear.
Yeah, looks like we've lost Alistair. His question was, what tools, channels are you using for technology horizon scanning? Do you put out challenges to solve that the supply chain might have solutions or ideas on?
We don't, but it's something I'm kind of like thinking about. I don't know if people are from a chap called Steve Pattinson. I worked with Steve. He's based at Sellafield when we were looking at the new techniques for in situ dismantling. And Steve mentioned to me some of these ideas and initiatives. So I'm kind of like keen on hearing about them. We don't do them at the moment. But, if that's the kind of thing that's out there that we're not tapping into, then I'd welcome somebody explaining to me, what's out there and whether we can take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you. And final question from Peter Fleming.
Yeah, I think Jim, you more or less just answered mine, but I was just thinking along the same lines as Alistair there. What would you say are the biggest future challenges on the programme, and how can the knowledge and experience that some of our members have gained and sort of learned through the sort of Sellafield decom program, how can that be best shared with your program?
Yeah, I think, Peter, it's kind of like it's we use things like diamond wire and laser and kind of it's standard sort of tried and trusted technologies. We're not very good at the bringing forward the TRL, if you're familiar, the sort of low TRL ideas and initiatives. And that's the kind of thing, I'm thinking is there things out there that we don't know about, that are whiz-bang ideas that, if with a bit of money they could be developed further. So, yeah, we tend to use tried and trusted, but I do think there's an opportunity for innovation, but I don't think we're taking best advantage of it yet.
And there's certainly quite a few of our members been involved in that with Sellafield, so there's maybe a separate conversation there, Jim. Yeah. So thanks.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like I'm really interested in hearing what you guys are doing for Sellafield and whether there's some things there that I don't know anything about that we might be able to use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Clearly a bit of interest piqued by that presentation, so appreciate you taking the time to give that to members this morning. And thank you everyone for your questions as well. So we'll move on to our next speaker, and that is going to be Elsa Mason and Joanne Chambers, and they're going to be talking about introducing ISO 45003, new guidelines on psychosocial health and safety at work and managing psychosocial risks. So over to Elsa and Joanne.
Good morning, I'm Elsa Mason from DMA Safety Management, and I'm presenting this morning alongside fellow cluster member Joanne Chambers from Lakeland Capabilities to look at the new ISO standard that is coming out. Before we look at the standard, I just wanted to kind of talk to you briefly about why it is that this is important. These are the statistics for the mental health issues. These were produced by the Health and Safety Executive, and they run up to March 2020. And if you look at those, you can see that 51% of our new and long-standing cases of work-related ill health were stress, anxiety and depression running up to March 2020. And similarly, working days lost were 55%. So that means that there were 828,000 cases of ill health altogether, of which 347,000 were new cases. And that's something like 17.9 million lost days. That's before we hit the pandemic this time, well, March last year. The figures we know will have got significantly worse. So this is a great time to be looking at how we address some of those risks in our businesses. So first of all, this links in with the ISO 45001, which is the occupational health and safety standards. The need for this is huge, and we've been looking at mental health first aiders and mental health in the background in a lot of businesses for quite some years now. But what this starts to do is give us a structure that means that we can look at how we address this, not just for the individual people that we're aware of that are struggling, but how we take a risk-based approach so that we can identify what controls are needed for the vast majority of our people, as well as for particular individuals. The need at the moment is absolutely huge, and many businesses are looking at planned major change as they reopen their offices and plan for new working patterns. So it's a really good time to have a look at the psychosocial risk within your business and how you best address it. I think the other thing that's really worth saying is that the principles of this standard can be implemented without the need for going for the ISO certification. So for smaller businesses where ISO is not your thing, it's still worth a look at. And if you've already got ISO 45001, then there's an option to extend to address these issues too. I'm now going to ask Joanne to present the next slides.
Morning everyone, so I'm Joanne Chambers. So as Elsa talked about, statistics in relation to our mental wellbeing don't paint a very positive picture. And a really good way to look at this is the mental health continuum. Some of you will be familiar with this sort of continuum. And we all exist somewhere on these two different axes, and we can move around them depending on what's going on in our lives. And the idea of the two axes is to highlight that you can have people with poor mental health, with diagnosed mental conditions, who cope well, who've got positive well-being. Equally, we can have people with poor well-being who don't actually have any sort of diagnosis. So there's different variations of where people can sit on this. It's highly likely as a nation, the statistics are very much telling us this, that we've got depleted levels of well-being following the COVID-19 crisis. We've seen this on the left-hand side, very much we've seen this in the higher rates of prescription drugs that are being higher reports of anxiety and depression coming through. On the right-hand side, it's not nearly as clear. These are people who haven't been diagnosed with anything. So it's not that obvious what's going on, but we are beginning to see sort of reports coming through of this very heavily predicted secondary epidemic of burnout, of stress-related absenteeism. But what has also been a very important shift is that the COVID-19 crisis has very much cemented our need to acknowledge psychological safety as a universal human right. So languishing, I think, in the bottom right corner is probably a term a lot of you will identify with. I've spent a lot of the last 12 months languishing. I think probably, if I asked for a show of hands, a lot of people would say, yeah, languishing is where they've been sitting a lot. And the languishing piece is often what gets missed by organisations. We are waiting for people to be one thing or another. We're waiting for people to get themselves back to positive mental well-being, or we wait until they fall into the worst, the sort of mental disorder area before we actually react and deal with things. And I think whereas before, where we always thought about mental health as this 1 in 4, we need to start considering that large proportions of the workforce may now be experiencing poor mental well-being, which if we don't attend to might progress to poor mental health. So we need a roadmap for recovery. We need to find a way out of this situation. And ISO 45003 can really provide this. I think lots of businesses in the last few years have been looking to promote positive mental health, but currently not really doing it in a very systemic way. And as Elsa said, 45003 helps to try and put that system into place. I think the approach in relation to mental health at workplace has been very employee-centred on the past, where we've been dealing with the people on the left-hand side of this continuum. The standard, introducing the standard, will increase organisational responsibility, and it's likely to reach all employees in a much more proactive way. So as the next slide shows, ISO 45003 is all about psychosocial hazards. So what are we talking about when we talk about psychosocial hazards? Well, psychosocial risk is all these intangible hazards in a workplace that have the potential to cause mental, emotional, or psychological harm. And I think it's the intangible bit that is what is the issue for us. So we're talking about things like excessive work hours and workload, perhaps poor leadership and culture, at the extreme end, bullying and harassment, a lack of support in the workplace, all these kind of things. And ISO 45003 describes 3 main groups when it talks about psychosocial hazard identification. We've got how work is organised, social factors of work, and work environment. And I think one look at this slide and you'll all identify that all of these factors listed on these slides are likely to have been affected by changes to employees' working arrangements. So last March, we immediately presented all our employees with a whole host of psychosocial risk factors when we dispersed them out from the offices and sort of, you know, it was unavoidable, and sent people to sort of deal with the COVID crisis. We're potentially about to do this again. We're about to potentially bring sort of hybrid working arrangements, changes to people's working design, that kind of thing. So again, we're maybe going to expose employees to a whole host of social factors again. But these sources of stress don't always result in clinical levels of stress. Not everything is diagnosable. And much of what employees might be experiencing at the moment is actually a reaction to a psychosocial risk that can be addressed. And I think as businesses, we shy away from dealing with these issues. We think they're clinical, we think we don't have the qualifications to address them. And I think if we reframe our thinking to consider psychosocial hazards that exist in our workplace as risks that we can measure and that we can mitigate, then we can start to build a much more systemic approach to dealing with psychological health and safety. And on the next slide, we've got this sort of risk assessment process that those of you involved in the safety industry will be really, really familiar with. 5003 is just a risk assessment process applied to psychological hazards. There's no reinvention of the wheel here. We've got identifying the psychological hazards and primary risk factors that you would look at as a safety issue. Then there's assessing the risks to determine what changes can be made, putting in steps to mitigate and control those risks, and then reviewing those control measures, assessing the effectiveness of any action taken. But the big point, the big push from 5003 is the need to consult with employees. They are far more likely to have a wider and in-depth knowledge of what the issues are. And this is something that many companies are not doing. And given what's gone on in the last 12 to 15 months, it's vital that we ask our employees now where they feel the psychological risks lie and what about the changes that we might be about to bring to their working lives pose concerns from them. Okay, so I'm going to pass you back to Elsa now.
Thanks, Joanne. So Joanne and I are working together to support businesses as they look at this with a range of interventions. Firstly, starting with mental health surveys and data analysis to understand what is going on in your individual business. Because it's, as Joanne's just said, it's not until we understand what is going on for our particular employees and for our particular set of environments that we can then start to look at what interventions are right for both your business and for your people. It does, between the two of us, can give you a combined approach of psychology and occupational health and safety, so that we're looking at how we manage things for the general employee population, but also the extra support there for where you come across incidents of issues of sort of diagnosed conditions too, so we can support the many and the few. So come and talk to us if this is something that you would like to know a bit more about for your particular business, and you can contact both of us with those details. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. So we're just slightly running over, so we'll keep the momentum going if we can. We've got 3 3x3 presentations coming up next, and the first of those is home to work.
I've got my stopwatch ready. Karen, I'll do you a 3, 2, 1. So
Okay.
there's your slides now.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
So this is such a fantastic time for our training centre in Cleatamore. Thanks to the Beck, we're about to move into fabulous new premises that will provide us with the space we've been so desperately lacking and enable us to reach many more people who need our help. Last week, one of our ex-learners gave me an envelope, and in this was some money and a note that said, "Please put this towards your cooker appeal. Hope you to continue to do for others what you have done for me." That left me speechless. The impact that our staff have on learners' lives every now and again literally takes my breath away. There are so many examples of times when our learners have had a massive breakthrough. The learner who failed to keep 5 appointments that the job centre had made for her, yet had actually attended each one, standing on the other side of the road, unable to cross the road and come in for her appointment. And she now works as a volunteer in our centre and helps others. The learner whose temper has ruined every aspect of his life, he succeeded with his anger management techniques. And this story, the story of the anonymous donor with the charmed life, everything ticked on her life plan, the degree, the childhood sweetheart, the fabulous house, until she developed ME at the same time as moving in to the area. Her illness made her feel alone and miserable, and quickly led to feelings of anxiety and depression. The holistic support that we give her allowed her to develop self-help strategies to overcome these feelings. Mental health can adversely affect any one of us. Since Skills for You started, 71% of our learners have gone on to volunteer, employment or training. And when I consider the difficulties they have overcome, I am so very proud. We have an open door policy. Many of our learners have multiple complex issues, and we encourage a change of thinking, learning how to problem solve or learning how to get rid of self-defeating thoughts, and then develop bespoke strategies to overcome those. Some of the issues we deal with includes people recovering from drug, alcohol, gambling, anger, generational unemployment, social isolation, anxiety, depression. We're already seeing the effects of COVID, as well presented in the previous presentation. There's an overwhelming body of evidence which claims that there'll be a massive upsurge in anxiety and depression as we emerge from the pandemic. And that could be you, or it could be me. So how can you help? Well, we need manpower. We're growing quickly. Many of the new activities are about to be possible. We need physical support and help to get them over the line.
And I'm sorry, Karen, we've hit the 3 minutes.
Okay.
But
Thank
hopefully
you.
people can see what you need from the slide.
Thank you very much.
Interesting to see the crossover between what member companies are looking at and what's happening out in our community as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a real correlation there, isn't there? Yeah. Okay, next up, I understand we've got Shirley Swan from Portakabin. Shirley, are you ready? You doing your own screen?
Yeah, I'm going to do my own slides.
Brill. Once you've clicked into there, I will give you your 3, 2, 1 countdown.
Hang on 1 sec. There we go. Okay, yeah, perfect.
Lovely. 3, 2, 1, go.
My name's Shirley. I'm the Business Development Manager for Utilities, Waste and Recycling, working for Portakabin Group Limited. Portakabin are based in York, and we manufacture and supply temporary and permanent building solutions to fit any solution or application. So we've got various different divisions within our teams. We've got a sales team who sell brand new buildings and second-hand buildings. We've got a hire team, so we hire from 1 week up until 5 years, however long you want. We've got a site accommodation team who deal mainly in construction, and we've got a toilet and washroom team, which is our Portaloo team. And we all come under the one umbrella of one Portakabin, and we all work together and use our experience to help us with our work. This is our 60th year. So it's a birthday this year, 60th birthday, and we're operating in 10 countries across Europe, and we've got 3 dedicated manufacturing facilities across Europe, the main one being in York, which is where our head office is. What I want to do, so whether you currently work in a Portakabin building, whether you've worked in a Portakabin before, whether you've never been in a Portakabin building, or whether you had your secondary school French lessons in an old Portakabin building many, many years ago, I want to just kind of change perception. So there's some random pictures that I'm going to go through. Just to give you an idea of what Portakabin do. Portakabin buildings use 90% less waste, 50% faster and 90% fewer vehicle movements than traditional builds, so it reduces time, waste and disruption on site. This is an example of some of our site accommodation buildings we put into MHI Vesta, and this is an example of how we can get them into tight spaces in places such as London city centre we needed to get this particular project into. We do office space, so meeting room area, office space, so whether it's a 2-person office or a 250-person office, we can cater for everybody. We do lab spaces, production facilities, so you can see here it's got a higher roof depending on the equipment that will be needed to put inside this facility. This is an example of a canteen that we've got for 250 people at Hinkley Point C. Some toilets and some shower rooms and changing rooms, locker rooms, and we also do hospital theatres, believe it or not. So this is Stoke Royal Hospital. It's got a concrete floor and it's one of our Portakabin buildings. This is an example of some social distancing projects that we put together, so we can do additional buildings for social distancing, screening buildings, thermoscanner buildings, testing buildings, and some of the Sainsbury's and Tesco buildings that you're going in to get your milk and your bread on a Saturday morning were also our buildings. So when you look around, you probably wouldn't even realise we're a Portakabin building. If you go onto our website, there's loads of case studies based across all different sectors, because we're involved across all sectors, and more information. And if you need anything else from myself, or if you've got any opportunities that you want to send across to me, then there's my contact details. And that's it.
3 seconds under, Shirley. Excellent. Well done.
Thank you.
And you certainly changed my view of Portakabins, I have to say. I hadn't realised quite how much you could do and how they could look, so well done on that.
Thank you.
So our third 3x3, we have Dave McCall from the Wellbeing Forum, whose meetings I used to attend and were always very, very positive. Dave, are you there?
Yes, hi Diane, how are you?
I'm grand, thank you. And you've obviously got the slides ready there, so are you ready for your countdown?
Yeah, are you going to count me down?
I am. 3, 2, 1, go.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me back to this meeting to discuss and inform people who the Wellbeing Forum are and what we do. Next slide, please. So I'm David McCall. I've been on Sellafield for 20 years in health and safety, and we started on my last project introducing mental health first aiders, and I think we were the first project in the construction industry in the UK to do this. And since then, over the last 6 years, we've now, I think there's over 250 mental health first aiders across Sellafield, working for the contractors and Sellafield. From that, we decided to start up the Wellbeing Forum. Next slide, please. So just to talk about, I mean, I'm going to skip through these statistics. This is Public Health England's surveillance report. Average mental distress was 8.1 higher in April 2020. Again, these slides will be shared. The proportion of people experiencing sleep problems increased to 16%, due to the pandemic. The proportion of adults who reported a level of psychological distress and above the threshold increased to 24%. And just to back up what Elsa and Joanne was saying, that we don't know what this pandemic's going to end up. We don't know what's coming out of it. We from the mental health, the Wellbeing Forum, we say there's going to be the next pandemic because of people coming out of lockdown. We're welcoming people back to work who hasn't seen anybody, physically seen anybody for 12 months. And this is really important for the Wellbeing Forum to be there to support not just our colleagues, our friends and our families. Next slide, please. So, Wellbeing Forum started in 2016. It's been going for now 6 years now. We're getting back on track again. It was because it was all remote and virtual last year. We're looking to do some activities for Mental Health Awareness Week next week, and we're hopefully going to get our fourth conference this year. Hopefully, if June goes to plan. Again, next slide, please. So this is just some of the things with mental health the Wellbeing Forum have done. We've had 3 conferences ranging from mental health in the workplace, mental health with young people, suicide, self-harm, and LGBTQ. Over 500 people attending. We've had concerts, we've raised money for local charities, we've had stand downs, and the Wellbeing Forum now stretches not just across the UK, we've actually got members from Trinidad who dial in, which is this afternoon is the Wellbeing Forum meeting. Next slide, please. I've got 5 seconds left. Next slide. I'm just going to crack on. Okay, so what we're doing after May, the exams, we're going to be sitting down with Inspira
I'm
schools.
sorry, you've hit your 3 minutes. Sorry. You'll have to put in the chat whatever else you wanted to say. Back to you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you everybody for those 3x3s. 3 minutes flies by pretty quick, doesn't it? So we will go straight on to the link update with Vicky Ritson. I'm going to just pop up a slide for you, and over to you, Vicky, when you're ready.
Thanks, Andrew. Morning, everyone. No, it's almost afternoon, so I'll crack on. I don't have a lot to report for the last 4 weeks because 2 of those weeks were the school Easter holidays. I hope everyone had a nice long weekend at least, or possibly a little bit longer, which again is important. I was certainly ready for it, and I'm sure many of you were as well. So I'm going to crack right on with what's happening this term. Andrew, if you wouldn't mind moving my slide on. As restrictions are lifting, schools are coming forward with more requests now, and I'm pleased to say we've got some cracking and larger group activities going on. We weren't able to do mock interviews last term, but they are back on the agenda. And as you can see there, I've put up sort of May and June requests, those larger group requests that have started to come through. For a reminder of these, obviously we'll share the slides later, or if you want to share them with colleagues, then I would encourage you to do so. I have also put all these requests on the cluster website. We have a little events tab there. Thank you to Hazel for that. And there's also events and requests for July on there as well. So there's plenty to go at. And just to remind you in terms of the support that you get, obviously my role is to make all the arrangements for you and make the volunteering as easy and as accessible as possible. So you can give me a ring, drop me an email, say what you're interested in helping with. I would take your book in, explain the format and what's expected, what you can expect when you come on board, provide all the links you need to get into school, whether it's virtually or hopefully face-to-face later in the term, and take feedback after, and also provide feedback as to how the event has gone for the students, which I think is equally as important for you to know that you made a difference, and you definitely do. I know that without asking. So it's really easy to volunteer. Please do take a look. As I say, they're all on the events web pages at the cluster as well. Next slide, please, Andrew. So I'm going to pinch a little statement from John Granger. I saw his response to the cluster being in the Hot 100 recently, and he said of the cluster that it's a community committed to moving forward together, which I totally agree with. And we have a history of shared vision and values, no more so than the work that we've done through the Business and Skills Collaboration Programme. So I hope you won't mind me approaching you again, because we've started work on our on planning for our annual careers fair. This will happen in late autumn. It's normally around the end of November, sometime like that. But as you can imagine, it's going to take some planning to do. So we are seeking sponsors. We want to ensure that we can deliver the best information, advice and guidance to our students this time. It's so important as we come out of restrictions and students start to get back to some sort of normal, that we can support our students with that. We're working with all partners to ensure that it remains the go-to careers fair in the region. And if you were to support us, you would be associated with a really worthwhile and well-established event, usually attended by all Copeland and Allerdale secondary schools, many training providers and local employers too. Any contribution you could make would be welcome. And if you'd like to have a chat through that with myself or with my colleague Deborah Naylor, we'd be about to have a chat with you definitely. Last slide, Andrew, please. So there's lots to get involved in this term and beyond. Please check out the calendar and get in touch to offer your support if you can. Just a reminder that the rest of the county has a similar programme in place. Contact your local LEAC, local employer engagement coordinator, for more details. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Vicky. Great. Okay, so we are just coming up to the end. Peter, I don't know if there's any sort of words that you want to add just before we go into the networking.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to all our speakers today. I think I'm still reeling with the amount of acronyms I don't fully understand from John's presentation first, but I thought a really interesting share from John. Also, Jim Cochrane speaking about submarine dismantling, interesting subject, and I'm sure there's some opportunities for our members there going forward, and we'll try and sort of make some good connections. Elsa, Joanne, thank you very much for your presentation. Really important subject I think all of us need to sort of reflect on, no matter how big our businesses is, because employees have gone through a lot of change over the last 12 months and something that we, as mentioned in the 3x3s, that we're still dealing with going forward. I put in the chat, anybody wants to have a go at beating Diane's egg timer in a future presentation? It's not easy, you need to practice, but yeah, thank you again for that. And Vicky, as always, great to have an update on Inspira and the programs with the schools. And just to reach out, anybody that can help with the sort of mock interviews going forward. I've done it myself. I'm always amazed at how well prepared the students are and come with their CVs and what their sort of aspirations are. So anything that we can do with a bit of experience to help and engage them looking forward is something that we should continue to do and certainly needed in the short term. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.